I hope you're all doing well. We're back with our video of Rahu's transit in Krittika for all the ascendants. We're starting with Libra to Pisces today. So welcome, Kṣaṇāti.
Namaste, Nav. It's so good to be here with you in the Jyotish community to go into detail about this very powerful, potent transit of Rahu in Krittika Nakshatra. In our first video, we discussed the general effects of the transit, the dates of the transit. So if as we're going through the different positions today and you're not sure when it starts, how long it's going to last, when it's going to end, please consult our previous video to get some details on that. So I just want to start with the chant to Rahu, kind of get things started. Ardakaya Mahaviryam Chandraditya Vimardinam Simhita Garva Sambutam Tamrahu Pranamam Yaham. Ardakaya Mahaviryam Chandraditya Vimardinam Simhita Garva Sambutam Tamrahu Pranamam Yaham. Ardakaya Mahaviryam Chandraditya Vimardinam Simhita Garva Sambutam Tamrahu Pranamam Yaham. Om Brahm Brim Brahm Saharahave Namaha. 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 Hari Om Namah Shivaya. Namaste. So we'll dive right into it, everyone. We're starting with Libra, going through Pisces today, because in the vast history of all of our videos, we do Aries through Virgo. And now for a couple transit videos, we're going to start with Libra through Pisces and then do Aries through Virgo. So if you're wondering why we're doing this, it's to balance out the scheme of history. So I'm going to share my screen. And now we're going to first discuss what does it mean if you're a Libra ascendant during this time of Rahu in Krittika. So if you're looking at the Libra ascendancy, first we look at that functional benefic malefic relationship. And I do consider, Libra's ruler, Venus, Shukra, Deva, to be in a good functionally benefic relationship with Rahu. I consider Rahu's friends to be Saturn first, Venus second, and pretty friendly with Mercury as well. Now, when you're a friend with Rahu, that's kind of like being a friend with someone who's going to get you in trouble a little bit. But that's okay. So we do consider a somewhat functional experience that's on the more positive side for the Libra ascendant, but we have to consider that this Krittika transit is primarily affecting the 8th house. Now, I always like to focus on the positives first. So when we're looking at the positive effect of this, we're looking at the Moksha Bhava house. And so this is an opportunity to really deepen your mystical experience. To find certain things in your life, new spiritual practices that are really going to help take your spiritual life to the next level. And maybe these things that you're not familiar with, certain things that are kind of new to your dinacharya that you want to kind of incorporate into your life. So that's something important to mention, whether you're going to be developing a new chanting practice, you want to find a new type of yoga. These are some of the positive effects of that 8th house position. And we also know that the 8th house is a house of sudden wealth or an inherited wealth. Remember, we're just talking about the positives right now. So this is a good time for speculative investing. Again, to take a little bit more of a gamble or a risk, so to speak. I never encourage gambling. But this is more of a risk-taking for a financial reward kind of position when we're looking at that 8th house. Maybe you're looking for something that it might not do that well, or it could do really well. So you just throw a little shtickle in there to see how it's going to do in the long run. So the favorable aspects of that 8th house, it's really that mystical or occult potential where again, Rahu represents our mystical or occult potential. And I do believe we're going through some form of exaltation here in Krittika Nakshatra. So how can you take your spirituality to the next level? How can you take your mystical or occult experience to the next level? And on the material side, right, how can we make some financial investments that could be speculative but could pay off well? Because if you look at Rahu, always has an equal aspect on the house opposite from it. And so we're seeing that house on the second house, which is stored wealth. So again, this could be something where one positive side is a speculative investment here leads to store wealth. Or maybe we're going to talk about the darker side of this transit, but the eighth house energy can represent the death, the loss of loved ones, which could leave an inheritance. And now you have wealth for your family. So that's how you can kind of see this transformation. If you do have that potential, because next I want to talk about some of the challenges of this position. And remedially, right? I never talk about a challenge without talking about what we can do about it. But with that eighth house transit position, this is a house of moksha, which means it can have to do with death and it can have to do with loss. So if you do have some elderly members of your family, they might be going through more serious health challenges over the course of this period. What does that mean? It's a time to really show up in their life. You know, sometimes our life is very busy, you know, depending on what our priorities are. And we don't necessarily have time for those elderly or family members that are suffering. And if you see this transit and you already know who I'm talking about when I begin to discuss this vulnerability, go spend time with them. Go spend time with your grandfather or grandmother if they're still alive and they're getting older. Go spend time with your parents if they suffer from disease. This is a really important time and that's a mystical or occult experience too, to be of service in the way and to have that deep spiritual connection with your family and your ancestors. So we can't really deny how important that is. But also individually, because the eighth house is the latter state, 3 stages of disease in Ayurveda, Sanche, Stanasham, Shre, Vyakti, and Beta, which means if you have been dealing with some health challenges, unfortunately, this transit can make it even more difficult because now we're entering this point where due to Krittika Nakshatra, which represents our ancestral karma, maybe we have certain genetic predispositions in our health, and now those genetic predispositions are coming to the surface. And one of the things I always mention with Rahu, because I really like to focus on the positive side of Rahu, is there's a higher side and there's a lower side to Rahu. And the lower side to Rahu in the eighth house, it has bad habits. So the question is this, are you going to go to the lower side of this energy where this house is drugs and alcohol and gambling and sexual activity outside of the marriage? Let's be honest, if you're a Libra ascendant, you like pleasure. So if you're going to go towards some of these things, which is drugs or alcohol or maybe promiscuity, it could lead to some serious health challenges. It could lead to addiction. So it's really time to arrest those habits, follow a discipline, give up alcohol, give up the drug, you know, wait for the right person to be in a romantic relationship with them before participating in sexual activity. And this can really open up that deeper mystical, occult, spiritual side of the eighth house, which doesn't want to take shortcuts when it comes to our spiritual evolution. So it wants to practice brahmacharya. It wants to practice abstinence from intoxicants. So this is a little bit of the higher level when we're talking about this transit for the Libra ascendancy. I hope that's been beneficial for you Libra ascendants out there, both on the good things and some of the challenging things that are helpful to work on right now.
Thank you.
Scorpio, Vrishaka. So when we're looking at the Scorpio transit here, first thing you got to notice is that Ketu's exaltation right there in the ascendant too. So before we get even into Rahu, this has been a very transformative time. The whole time that Ketu has been in Scorpio and that Rahu has been in Taurus. Now, that would mean that some of these things are really going to be culminating and becoming more intensely right now. And one of the things that I really want to discuss about this transit for the Scorpio ascendant is that one of the things when you have the Ketu in the Scorpio and the Rahu and the Taurus in the 7th house is that you can kind of start to give too much of your power, too much of your identity over to your partner. Now, the exaltation of this position, it improves this where maybe your partner is helping transform you for the better. And that's wonderful too. You know, there's this great energy of when you're in the right romantic relationship with someone, they bring the best out of you. You bring the best out of them. But in this process of a willingness and open-mindedness to trying to make other people happy, we can lose ourselves. We can lose our focus of our own interest. We can lose our focus of spending time with our friends, spending time with our family members that we want. Why? Because our partner wants us to be with them. And so one of the things that I'm concerned about as this Krittika Rahu position takes hold in the 7th house is a codependent relationship, which means is my mood and my emotions based on the mood and emotions of my romantic partner. And there's this real chance for spiritual evolution when Rahu is in Krittika. But that would mean that if our partner is in a bad mood and we're in and you're a Scorpio ascendant, that doesn't mean that you have to be in a bad mood. No, it actually means that you need to try to be in a good mood and do your dharma and not get distracted by the strange energetics of your partner. Because if you're a Scorpio ascendant and that Rahu in Krittika is hitting your 7th house, it's going to be causing some graha, strange energies in their life. So you really want to be able to kind of find your independence throughout this period, but also not base your independence on your partner's will, on their desires, on their wants. And there's another energy here, which is you really don't want to try to control your partner. The real energy I'm talking about here is independence for the Scorpio ascendancy, and allowing yourself to be free so that you can achieve your potential and find your own power and not lose it in someone else, and also not to try to take someone else's power away from them. Now, obviously, there are Scorpio ascendants who aren't in romantic relationship. You don't have a partner, you're single, you don't even want one. So what is that kind of energy of that Rahu and Krittika kind of manifest at that level? Well, it's not just romantic relationships, the 7th house. It's also business relationships and partnerships. So if that energy isn't trying to kind of fine tune the romantic relationship right now, how about fine tuning your business relationship, your relationship with money, your relationship with your boss, your relationship with contracts? This is one of those things where if you blindly, as a Scorpio ascendant, go sign some long-term contract and Rahu is in Krittika, it could go one of two ways. It could be materially beneficial and totally push you to your full prosperity and success, or it can trap you. It could lock you in a financial prison where someone is benefiting off of your work. So you really want to be able to kind of analyze the agreements that you're making over the course of this period with Rahu in the 7th house. As we mentioned, the big energy of this transit is independence, allowing yourself to be you. So are you making any kind of agreement with your romantic partner, with your job, with a contractual agreement, with a business or an organization that is going to limit your independence? That could create the stickiness, the trappiness of sometimes the darker side of Rahu manifest. So really evaluate things right now and maybe don't make any long-term commitments or contracts. If you're a Scorpio ascendant and you're thinking about getting married, I would at least wait till Rahu goes into the Aries side of Krittika. So this is just something to consider about really finding that independence in yourself, which again, Rahu is aspecting the ascendant. It's really about finding yourself and taking away all of the pressure and burden of what other people want you to be, of what your partner wants you to be, of what your parents want you to be, of what you think society wants you to be. And allow that occult or esoteric energy to awaken inside of yourself and say, you know what? I know I'm being told 1,000 different things, but this is what I really want. And that's what I'm going to go towards. And it might rub someone else the wrong way, but you know what? That's how you're going to achieve the full potential of this period for yourself. So I just wanted to mention that. And I hope it's supportive for you Scorpio ascendants out there. So next I wanted to begin to talk about the Sagittarius position. Now, when we're looking for the Sagittarius position, Rahu Krittika for the Sagittarius Ascendant, we have to understand, again, a little bit of the relationship between Sagittarius ruler, Jupiter, and Rahu. And, you know, a lot of people say Guru Chandal Yoga, Rahu and Jupiter is like the worst combination in the world. It's not. I disagree, because sometimes to find the truth, to find your religious or spiritual understanding, sometimes you got to go through the shadows. Sometimes you got to go through the illusion. You know, it's kind of like that old ideology. There's this cult, there's this spiritual cult that you're interested in. And you experience that spiritual cult and you're like, you know what? I don't want anything to do with that. That's illusion. And then it kind of pushes you on your right spiritual path. Um, so it's a little bit of like trying to better your habits and to be the best person that you can be. And one of the things that we're seeing here with this transit of Rahu going into the 6th house in Krittika position, if you're a Sagittarius ascendant, this is the house of service, right? So when we talk about kind of this higher side and this lower side, a Rahu in Krittika in the 6th house, it really wants to make money. And sometimes it wants to make money just for the sake of making money. So if you have that kind of burn to work right now, that's normal. But how can we be of service with that? That's what the Sagittarius energy is really pushing us for. How can we be of charity? Okay, let's say we're making $100,000 a year, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 to put into the right service organization so that we're helping other people that are less fortunate than us. Because one of the things that we want to understand about this transit is that 6th house activation is the house of enemies. And with Rahu in its exalted form kind of transiting the 6th house, you might not know who to call your enemy and who to call your friend. The person that you thought was your friend, maybe they don't have your best interests at heart. And the person who's giving you harsh, constructive criticism that you don't want to hear might actually be your friend because they want to help you grow. And that's that Upachaya self-improvement evolutionary house. It's all about, for the Sagittarius ascendant, how to take constructive criticism, how to be the best person that you can be. But the Rahu exaltation, it wants friends that are going to say what they want to hear and tell them what they want to hear, instead of the friends that are going to tell them the harsh truth because they want them to be the best person that they can be. So the question is, a friend is an ally. You know, a lot of times when we think of the word friend, we think of someone who is going to make us happy, is going to make us pleasurable. That's not really what a friend is. That is an associate who gives you pleasure. A friend is someone who wants to awaken you to your own potential. And with Rahu and Krittika, you know, manifesting in this potential for ourselves, sometimes the flack that we get in our life over the course of this period, if you're a Sagittarius ascendant, we think, oh, I don't like that person. You know, they're annoying. They're always talking crap on me and they make me feel bad about this issue, or, you know, they keep on telling me to stop eating so much sugar, to stop smoking marijuana, or like whatever it might be. And you're like, well, I don't want to listen to them. What do they know? Meanwhile, that individual stuck's complacent, ungrowing, unevolving, which is really the illusion of that 6th house energy. So it's really, for this period, for the Sagittarius ascendant, being open to criticism and maybe seeing that someone is kind of pushing us and saying what we don't want to hear is really what we do want to hear, but we just aren't ready to listen to it yet. Also, like the 8th house position that we talked about for Libra, now we're looking at the 6th house position for Sagittarius. And that's not like chronic disease as much the genetic, although obviously we have genetic constitutional challenges as well. Like, you know, our parents get hot, so we might get hot. Our parents like sweets, so we might get sweets. But the first 3 stages of disease are taking place in this 6th house. So is your Vata going out of balance? Is your Pitta going out of balance? Is your Kapha going out of balance? Probably because you're a Sagittarius, it's your Pitta going out of balance. But the energy here is, how do I refine my diet? because it's more of the basic things, not as much, you know, the obvious things that we find in the eighth house, like, you know, things that we know that we shouldn't be doing. But these are just things that we want to refine over the course of this period, which is our diet, which is, are we exercising? This is a great period to start exercising, to be more active for the Sagittarius ascendant. The Sagittarius ascendant thrives with stimulation and activity. And it's one of those things where you really do want to arrest your slight health challenges before they become serious health challenges. And this is an opportunity to kind of like take care of these things at an earlier level. So it's just one of those things to consider with that sixth house position, to really want to improve yourself and to better your relationship with these people you might think are your enemies but aren't. And it all kind of lends to service being the real orienting energy that's really, really positive here for the Sagittarius ascendant, both with your money, both with your time, and with your actions. And if you think of the combination of service and enemies, it lends to the old saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah.
Capricorn, Makara. So when we're looking at the Capricorn, you know, in the beginning of this ascendant, we're still seeing Jupiter coming through, and then we see Saturn carrying through this position for quite some time now. But the primary activation of Rahu is on the fifth house. This might have to do, especially with that Jupiter Saturn, it's like there's a lot of potential for career growth for the Capricorn ascendant over the course of this period. But what's the break between that potential for just doing well in your career and doing incredibly successful in your career? And one of the things that I look when I see that fifth house activation is education. This is a really strong period for the Capricorn ascendant to kind of focus on education. And this is a house of spiritual technique. So there's two kinds of education that can really manifest in a positive way here. One is education as relating to your career. Maybe you know, there's some aspect of your job that you know a little bit about, but you want to know more about it. Now is a good time to take some kind of experiential education and to start kind of practicing and learning that kind of new niche area of the stuff that you're doing. You know, it's like, you know, for example, if I'm an astrologer, I'm not a Capricorn ascendant, but let's say I was, you know, I love medical astrology, I love astrocartography, and I love the karma and soul cycle stuff. But one of the things that I've been, you know, getting kind of into is, you know, focusing more on romantic compatibility and also family relationships, improving your family relationships. So now I really want to start to practice that more if I'm a Capricorn ascendant. Find that thing that you know a little bit about, but you want to know more about, and really start to focus on it educationally. And this is also the house of the Bhakti, which means it's a great time to be incorporating a deeper chanting practice into your life. And to start maybe doing some kirtan and some mantras and things like that to balance out the heavy kind of career material aspect of being a Capricorn ascendant. So it is this real chance. Now, here's something really interesting for the romantic married type people out there. This Rahu activation is on the fifth house of your children, on offspring, on fertility. So, I mean, if you want to have children, great. This is a great time for fertility for you. Do the exaltation of Rahu. If you've been wanting to have kids, you're like, I'm having issues. This could be a really time for you to have kids, and it will increase the fertility of both men and women over the course of this transit that are a Capricorn ascendancy. Let's say that you don't want to have kids. Be careful, because sometimes Rahu can bring in surprises. So one of the things is if you don't want to have kids, or you're not ready to have kids, now's not the time to take any risks in that area, because before you know it, if you're a woman, you'll be having sickness and you'll be throwing up, be like, uh-oh, I'm pregnant. So this is something to be heavily considerate of. And just along those lines, just in general, because it really has in touch with getting in our mystical or occult power. And I know I mentioned it mostly focused with the eighth house, but this is an activation of serious romance. But the illusion of romance can sometimes manifest with Rahu's exaltation, which is because I'm attracted to this person sensually, sexually, that means I'm in love with them,
Hmm.
which is totally not true. Unfortunately, if you haven't figured this out yet, you eventually will.
Mhm.
There's something much deeper than the physical connection that you experience with someone that's actually going to lead to your long-term compatibility. But Rahu is going to make this visceral, confusing experience where you're like, oh, I'm attracted to this person and I want to be with them for the rest of my lives. And it doesn't quite work out that way. So also be kind of speculative or skeptical over the romantic interactions that you get to over the course of this period, and not give them too much weight, right? Like, don't fall in love too quickly with this person. Try not to have sexual activity when you're just in the early stages of dating in this during the course of this transit. So I really want to mention austerity and possibly the practice of brahmacharya being really beneficial over the course of this transit for the Capricorn ascendant. And that might be beneficial too, so you can focus on your job, so you can focus on your career, where a lot of energies are being activated as Rahu transits the 11th house of profits here, and a lot of potential material gains over the course of this period as well. So I hope that that is some interesting insight for the Capricorn ascendancy. Aquarius ascendant. I love discussing the Aquarius ascendant. I'm an Aquarius ascendant with Rahu right there in the first house. And I never think about this before I do this. And then I go back in the video and I listen to what I say about myself. Um, so here's something that's interesting for the Rahu and Krittika for the Aquarius ascendant. Now, Aquarius is co-owned, ruled by Rahu. So this is one of the most functionally benefic ascendants. For most Aquarius ascendants, Rahu is acting functionally benefic. So that's really nice as well. Now, we are seeing that Rahu's position is falling directly into the fourth house. This is the house of home. So would you be surprised to tell you that I've moved into a new home in the past 2 weeks? This is my new apartment, everyone, which I'm very happy and grateful to be in. This is one of the, it's just so funny sometimes. This is one of the transits and activations of that fourth house. It represents this kind of change and transformation to a new kind of vibe in your geographic location. So if you are considering moving into a new home, this is an excellent time to do it. But due to the Rahu's experience and it is exaltation, right? So it could really be beneficial for your career. If you make this geographic shift for yourself with that fourth house position of Rahu, it could be really beneficial and successful for your career because it's establishing independence and success in the home. So this is something to consider. But always with that Rahu transit, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult transition. It's a risk. It's a gamble because whenever you move out of one location, you're losing the security of that place and volunteering for an open-mindedness. And, there's just going to be some difficulty in that transition. I used to live in the woods, out in the middle of nowhere. Now I'm living closer to the highway and I hear the cars beeping and everything at 7 in the morning. So now I'm getting used to waking up at 6 or 7 in the morning, where between you and between me and the rest of the community here, sometimes I like to sleep at 8 or 9 in the morning. I don't really get that opportunity anymore. But you know what? Now that I'm waking up at 6, I have that many more hours to be productive, which is making sense with this transit, how it's more helpful with its aspect on my career. When I woke up this morning, I had that much more time to prepare for our analysis today. So it's just one of those things where it's uncomfortable, but it's beneficial. And that's really what this Rahu Krittika transit is, no matter what ascendant you are. In whatever area Rahu is influencing, it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's going to push you towards more success. It's going to push you to the full potential as long as you maintain humility over the course of this transit. Now, The fourth house is also the house of the mother. So, this is one of those things where over the course of this transit, you can really deepen your relationship with your mother or the female members of your family. It could be a really beneficial, hey, my mother's coming over for dinner tonight. But there is just those energies that it is a really special time to kind of deepen your relationship with the maternal, with the mothers in your family, with your grandmothers, and all of those aspects of your family are really going to be beneficial for you over the course of this transit. Now, here's something that I really wanted to mention too. And as an Aquarius ascendant, I've been experiencing it myself. The Rahu represents foreign and exotic experiences.
Mhm.
And it's now in the house of home, which is in the house of the geographic location. So a huge remedial aspect for the Aquarius ascendant during this period is to travel. I was just in San Diego. I'm going to Sedona, Arizona in 3 weeks. I'm going to Miami, Florida, December 31st. And who knows where I'm going in the beginning of next year, but hopefully somewhere fun. I think I'm going to Mexico. So it's just, you really want to be able, if you especially with the transition of your new home, you're going to find like you do want to stabilize there. But even if you're stuck in the same geographic location, one of the most beneficial things of this period for your duty yourself is to travel to places that are exotic or interesting, have good spiritual energy. I had never been to San Diego. Sedona has the best spiritual energy, and Mexico is Rahu in its nature. So you got to find these places that are going to activate that Rahu in the fourth house energy. And I firmly believe that if you started this Rahu and Taurus transit in one geographic location and you haven't moved and you're not traveling, you're going to go absolutely crazy. So either find that new home or travel, or ideally both, if you really want to get the full aspect of this period. And it's going to activate inspiration for you as well, because it's aspecting the career. So those shifts that you're making, they could be beneficial to the career. They could help you bring inspiration and intuition in your career as well.
Okay. Exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. It makes me like I really need to travel as much as possible.
Yeah, so much fun. Yeah.
I was in New York City this past weekend too. I think I told you it was awesome.
How was it? It was great.
It was great. It was really cool.
Everything's open there.
What's that?
Everything's opened. All like
Yeah. I mean, you had to show your vaccine card before you go into the concert, but it was the first time being inside in a concert with thousands of others of people in a long while, the indoor kind of thing.
super cool. Yeah.
So next I want to talk about the Pisces ascendancy. And just like with the Sagittarius ascendancy, I think there's a misunderstanding of Rahu's relationship with Jupiter. Rahu Dasha, then Jupiter Dasha. These things have a natural evolutionary energy as they relate to each other. But one of the things about the Pisces ascendant, it's all about faith. It's all about our spiritual understanding and getting more in touch with our spiritual understanding. And now we're seeing Rahu in the third house of communication, upachaya, self-improvement, evolution. So it's really about open-mindedness, because a lot of times when it comes to our spiritual experience, it's always limited when we have a closed mind. And with the Rahu's position in Krittika going into the third house, if you can really open your mind to a different way of perceiving things, and this could be religiously or spiritually, but this has to do with our principles and our core beliefs intrinsically within us. So maybe we need to be more open-minded. To me, the Pisces ascendant, it's been a really difficult period, but one of the things that we find over the course of this period that we've been in is people are becoming very radical in their perception of things and very closed-minded to even looking at the other side of the spectrum. I either believe this and everything opposite is wrong, or I believe this and everything opposite of that is wrong. What happened to getting along and respecting other people as human beings? So part of this period, which is going to be hugely evolutionary for the Pisces ascendant, is being open-minded to the other side of the coin. That's how you're going to grow over the course of this period. I'm talking about politically. I'm talking about spiritually. It's not that you surrender your beliefs. It's that you're willing to love people and not let their beliefs get in the way of being your friend, getting in the way of having a good relationship with them. We're all human, you know? And so why don't we open up our minds and try to get along with everyone else? Because sometimes that Pisces energy can be a little radical.
Mhm.
Now getting into that watery energy of wanting to get more empathic and really wanting to connect with people and open your mind to another way of seeing things. This is also due to the house of short-term travel position for Rahu. Maybe this isn't about, you know, as much of a long-term trip kind of thing, but definitely short trips and vacations and holidays are really going to be important over the course of this period. And then one thing that I really wanted to mention is this is the house of communication and expression. And this isn't, and Rahu is the foreign and exotic. So there's no better time for the Pisces ascendant to learn a new language other than now. Let's say you're interested in Sanskrit, you don't know it that well, Hindi, take a class on it, study it. Even if it's French or Spanish, or maybe English isn't your first language, and therefore Rahu could represent in the third house English to you. Investigate it, look into it. And you can see it all kind of lends to the open-minded energy. I really think the crux of the Pisces ascendant is about open-mindedness, and it's really a growth evolutionary period for the Pisces ascendant for sure.
That's awesome.
So I hope everyone enjoyed our elaboration on Rahu in Krittika through Libra through Pisces, and we'll do Aries through Virgo next time, Nav and I.
Thank you so much, Kṣaṇāti. Thank you. And I hope everyone enjoys their transit to Rahu and Krittika. And wish you guys all the best. And we'll come back soon with our Aries to Virgo series. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kṣaṇāti.
Thank you, Nav. Hari Om, Om Namah Shivaya.